As the golden hues of fall blanketed the rugged landscape near what we now call Fredericksburg, Texas, a small group of land surveyors embarked on a perilous journey. Under the employ of the Republic of Texas, their mission seemed simple: measure and demarcate the sprawling land grants and claims that were being carved out of the untamed frontier. But the reality of their task was anything but simple. This was 1841, a time when Central Texas was not just a frontier but a battleground. These surveyors were venturing 95 miles west of Austin, deep into the territory that belonged to the Comanche. Known to themselves as the Numunu, or the people, the Comanche were the unmatched masters of this land. They had transformed the southern plains into their domain, and their presence made this one of the most dangerous places on earth. The act of surveying land might have seemed mundane on paper, but for these men, it was a gauntlet. Each step deeper into this contested territory increased the risk of encountering a Comanche war party. The Comanche were not feared without reason. They were unparalleled horsemen, their raids precise and devastating, and their ability to strike terror into settlers and soldiers alike was legendary. To tread their land without permission was to invite the full weight of their retaliation. For the Republic of Texas, staking claims on these lands was not just about ownership. It was a challenge to the sovereignty of the Comanche, a people who had resisted Spanish, Mexican, and now Texian incursions for generations. For the surveyors, each boundary they marked was not just a line on a map, but a line drawn in defiance against one of the most formidable forces the continent had ever known. This day, under the shadow of Enchanted Rock, a monolith that held spiritual significance for the Comanche and other tribes of the region, the surveyors knew they were stepping into a crucible of history. Enchanted Rock, with its looming presence and storied past, was a silent witness to the tension and bloodshed that had defined this land for centuries. For Native Americans, this wasn't just about land. It was about life, culture, and survival. Each surveyor who dared to cross into these territories became a symbol of an ever-encroaching threat, a harbinger of the loss of a way of life that had thrived for generations. This was not just a job. This was a gamble with survival, set against the backdrop of a land that had seen more than its share of struggle and defiance. The Comanche knew it, the surveyors knew it, and the land itself seemed to echo it in every gust of wind that swept across its rugged terrain. The Comanche, known to themselves as the Numunu, meaning the people, embraced a name that echoed a universal truth among many native tribes, a self-identifier that reflected pride and unity. However, their neighbors and adversaries, such as the Apache, Waco, Tawankoni, Tonkawa, and countless smaller Texas tribes, had another name for them: the Comanche. This name, thought to derive from a Ute phrase meaning "those who fight us all the time," aptly captured the reputation of this fierce and resilient people. Originally an offshoot of the Shoshone, the Comanche's early existence in the harsh granite ranges and aspen forests of the Rocky Mountains was marked by struggle. Forced to migrate southward due to pressure from stronger tribes, they found themselves in the expansive plains of Texas and Oklahoma. It was here that their destiny would change forever, with the arrival of an animal that redefined their way of life: the horse, brought to the Americas by the Spanish in the 16th century. The Spanish, understanding the power of mounted warfare, sought to tightly control the secrets of horsemanship and horse care. However, over time, their efforts faltered. Raids by neighboring tribes, the escape of enslaved native individuals trained in handling horses, and inevitable cultural exchanges led to the diffusion of this knowledge. The Apache were among the first to introduce the horse to the Texas frontier, but it was the Comanche who formed a bond with this animal so profound that it became inseparable from their identity. Within a few short decades, the Comanche achieved mastery over horseback riding that rivaled the finest cavalry in the world. This newfound mobility transformed their lives. Where once they scavenged for roots and berries, they now thrived as hunters, relying heavily on the buffalo. Their wealth, measured in horses, grew to unparalleled levels, making them perhaps the richest tribe in North America in terms of equestrian assets. The horse not only elevated their hunting abilities, but also reshaped their military strategy, turning them into an unstoppable force on the southern plains. The Comanche's skill on horseback was described as almost mystical, an innate connection that defied simple explanation. This transformation laid the foundation for their rise as one of the most formidable powers in the region, a people whose name evoked both fear and respect across the land. In their earlier days, the Comanche roamed the rugged landscapes of the American frontier, scavenging for roots, berries, and animal remains to sustain themselves. Life was harsh, and survival often depended on sheer perseverance. But the arrival of the horse changed everything. With this new partner, they became a society of unparalleled mobility and skillful hunters, thriving on the buffalo that roamed the plains. The buffalo provided not just sustenance, but the foundation of their way of life, enabling them to grow into a self-sufficient, thriving community. Material wealth soon followed. Once impoverished in resources, the Comanche transformed into the wealthiest tribe on the continent in terms of horses. Their vast herds were a symbol of power and prestige, often surpassing those of their neighbors by staggering numbers. Horses became not only a tool for hunting, but also the backbone of their economy, trade, and military might. Where they had once been vulnerable to stronger tribes, the Comanche emerged as an unstoppable force, a raiding power that evoked fear and respect across the continent. The very mention of their name would silence conversations in saloons from Denver to the halls of power in Mexico City. Their campaigns reshaped the frontier, driving the Apache out of Texas and resisting the incursions of empires, Spanish, French, English, Mexican, and American alike. For smaller tribes that dared to challenge them, the consequences were often annihilation. The brutality of frontier life, exacerbated by European contact, was nothing new. Yet the intensity and scale of warfare the Comanche waged were unmatched. Their raids were swift, precise, and devastating, marking them as the unrivaled rulers of the southern plains. Their legacy was one of defiance and dominance, a testament to their extraordinary resilience and mastery over both their environment and their adversaries. Comanche raids were the embodiment of raw, unrelenting pragmatism. Unlike many other tribes, the Comanche did not initially adorn themselves with elaborate ceremonial dress or emphasize the taking of coup as a primary marker of prestige. Their martial society lacked rigid hierarchies. War chiefs were not hereditary leaders, but individuals capable of rallying the most warriors for a raid. In essence, Comanche warfare was brutally efficient, a strategy born from necessity and mastery of the frontier. Until the latter half of the 19th century, many Comanche warriors shunned the grand feathered headdresses often associated with Native American cultures. Instead, they donned animal head caps crafted from foxes, cranes, or buffalo, each symbolizing a connection to the natural world. Their bodies were frequently painted pitch black, a color they believed embodied death itself, striking fear into the hearts of their enemies. Raids often coincided with the full moon, earning it the infamous moniker Comanche Moon on the Texas frontier, a sight that brought terror to settlers and rival tribes alike. The fear was not unfounded. On countless moonlit nights, isolated families, both settlers and native, saw their homes reduced to ashes in mere minutes. Blood, smoke, and flames marked the path of Comanche warriors, leaving devastation and a reminder of their dominance over the land. Ironically, the Republic of Texas, born from defiance against Mexican rule, owed much of its existence to the relentless threat of Comanche raids. Before Texas's independence, the Mexican government had strategically invited Anglo-American settlers to act as a buffer, absorbing the brunt of Comanche aggression and protecting Mexico's heartlands. This strategy came at a steep price. For decades, settlers streamed into Texas from the United States, lured by promises of fertile land and opportunity. In return, they were required to convert to Catholicism and adopt Mexican citizenship. Many accepted these terms, but their dreams of prosperity often ended in brutal deaths as they clashed with the harsh realities of frontier life. From the Rio Grande Valley to present-day Fort Worth, settlements rose and fell under the looming specter of Comanche raids. And the Comanche did not relent. Their raids persisted with a ferocity that shaped the very fabric of Texas history, leaving an indelible mark on the frontier. Each attack was a testament to their resilience, their tactical brilliance, and their determination to defend their way of life against encroaching forces. Despite the ever-present danger of violence, the Republic of Texas found itself consumed by the mundane yet necessary tasks of governance. Among these was the monumental effort to survey and mark the boundaries of what they considered their newly won homeland. To accomplish this, surveying parties, typically consisting of 15 to 20 men, were dispatched across the rugged hill country northwest of San Antonio and Austin. Armed with steel ribbons, maps, and their determination, they ventured into some of the most contested and dangerous lands in the region. These surveyors meticulously documented the terrain, cataloging every ridge and valley, and hoped to return to Austin with valuable information that would solidify Texas's territorial claims. But their mission, though critical to the ambitions of the Republic, was a direct affront to the true rulers of these lands, the Comanche. From the very beginning, the Comanche observed the movements of these surveyors with calculating precision. To them, these parties were not just men marking boundaries, they were a tangible symbol of the encroachment threatening their way of life. Each line drawn on a map represented an attempt to erase centuries of Comanche sovereignty. The surveyors were viewed with seething hatred, for they embodied the expansionist ambitions of Austin's settlers, who sought to claim lands that had long belonged to the Comanche. The Comanche response was swift and unforgiving. Their mastery of the plains, combined with their unparalleled mobility and understanding of the terrain, ensured that no interloper went unnoticed. For the surveyors, every step west of the established settlements was a gamble, a silent acknowledgement that their presence alone was an act of defiance against a people who had defended their lands for generations. Surveying parties, venturing into the Comanche heartlands, were often met with unrelenting and brutal violence. The Comanche, fiercely protective of their lands, saw these groups not just as intruders, but as harbingers of displacement and destruction. When captured, surveyors could expect not just swift punishment, but the most harrowing tortures, a grim warning to others who dared trespass. And yet, despite the near-certain peril, the parties continued to come. Drawn by a mix of ambition, adventure, and a thirst for combat, young men from the backwoods of Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee, Arkansas, and Alabama flooded into Texas after the Revolution. Many had narrowly missed the bloody battles of Goliad, Guadalupe, Guillermo, and San Jacinto, but their appetite for danger remained unquenched. To them, joining a surveyor team offered not just employment, but an irresistible promise of excitement and the chance to carve their names into the frontier's rugged history. Such was the case for one particular group of young Texians, standing in the shadow of the imposing limestone monolith known as Enchanted Rock. This ancient, sacred landmark, long revered by local tribes, carried a heavy aura of spiritual significance. Native lore spoke of discontented spirits, fallen warriors, and shamed chiefs who haunted its slopes. Stories of sacrifices performed at its base only added to its mystique, and the land around Enchanted Rock was fiercely protected by those who believed in its power. To set foot in this territory was to invite hostility of the highest order. Yet for this group of 20-somethings, eager to prove themselves, the looming threat of violent, painful deaths was merely part of the allure. Their bravado and hunger for adventure drove them forward, but their experience and preparation kept them from being reckless. These newly minted Texans, armed with more than just youthful exuberance, understood the stakes. They were no fools, and they knew that every step into this contested land brought them closer to a trial by fire. This group of 15 to 20 surveyors was not only daring, but also among the most heavily armed men of their time. At the heart of their arsenal was the .36 caliber Colt Patterson revolver, a firearm that would come to symbolize the rugged ingenuity of the Old West. Patented by Samuel Colt in 1836 and produced in Paterson, New Jersey, the revolver's name honored its place of origin and its inventor's innovative spirit. Initially designed as a .28 caliber pistol, the Colt Patterson was upgraded to a .36 caliber in 1837, offering increased firepower. Unlike modern revolvers with 6 chambers, it featured a 5-shot cylinder, which required the user to remove the cylinder, load it manually with cartridges, and reassemble the weapon before firing. This reloading process, though cumbersome compared to later designs, represented a significant leap forward in firearm technology at the time. Weighing 2 pounds and 12 ounces and boasting a 9-inch barrel, the Colt Patterson was imposing in both size and sound. Its booming discharge and sleek design struck fear into the hearts of enemies. With an effective range of approximately 65 yards, it was a perfect match for the close-quarters, high-speed combat that defined the Texas frontier. Whether from horseback or on foot, this weapon gave its wielder a crucial edge in the unpredictable skirmishes of the era. For these surveyors, the Colt Patterson was more than a tool, it was a lifeline. Each shot fired carried the weight of survival, particularly in a landscape where every encounter could escalate into violence. Armed with this cutting-edge technology, they were prepared to face the challenges of the untamed land, even as the specter of Comanche resistance loomed large. For longer-range combat, many Texans relied on the .42 caliber Edwin Wesson percussion cap rifle, a single-shot weapon that marked a significant leap in firearm technology of the time. These rifles used small copper caps filled with mercuric fulminate as the ignition source. The shooter would place the cap onto a plug beneath the hammer. When struck, the cap ignited, firing the projectile. This simple yet effective mechanism allowed for faster reloading compared to older flintlock models. With an effective range of up to 150 yards, the Wesson rifle provided a crucial advantage in engagements requiring precision. Skilled users could fire 3 to 4 rounds per minute, a marked improvement over its predecessors. For surveyors and frontiersmen venturing into hostile territory, these advancements arrived at a pivotal moment, enhancing their ability to defend themselves against threats like Comanche raiding parties. This rifle was not only a tool of survival, but also emblematic of the rugged resilience of the Texas Rangers, the legendary force originally envisioned by Stephen F. Austin. In the 1830s, Austin established the Texas Mounted Rifles, a precursor to the Rangers, born out of necessity to defend the frontier. This hybrid military law enforcement group patrolled the vast Texas ranges, protecting settlers from Mexican governmental harassment, bandit raids, and the relentless assaults of the Comanche. By 1835, the Texas Rangers had been formally codified into an organized force, uniquely suited to both close-quarters combat and long-distance pursuits. Their legend quickly grew, not only within the dusty settlements of Texas, but also in the urban parlors of New York City, Boston, and Philadelphia. They were revered for their daring, their ferocity in battle, and their unyielding resolve. Among settlers, Mexicans, Americans, and even their adversaries, the Comanche, the tales of the Rangers spread like wildfire. In the flatland prairies, the river valley bottoms, and the rugged hill country, the Rangers were often the only significant resistance to the violence that defined the frontier. They were more than just defenders. They were symbols of a fierce and unyielding Texas, standing firm against all who threatened its borders. Among the ranks of the Texas Rangers, an assembly of towering, hard-edged men renowned for their ferocity, one figure stood apart: Captain John Coffee Jack Hays. Despite his relatively modest stature, Hays commanded more respect and fear than any of his contemporaries. Born in Little Cedar Lick, Tennessee in 1817, Hays came from a military family. His father, Harmon A. Hays, had served under Andrew Jackson during the War of 1812 and named his son after Jackson's trusted brigadier general, John Coffee. Jack Hays carried this legacy of leadership with him when, at the age of 19, he ventured to Texas in 1836, drawn by the promise of fortune, adventure, and the call of war. Although he arrived too late to take part in the Texas Revolution, he soon found his place within the ranks of the Texas Rangers. It was here, amid the chaos and danger of the frontier, that Hays began to carve out his legendary status. Life as a ranger was anything but easy. With casualty rates sometimes exceeding 50%, many who joined the force knew their chances of survival were slim. Young men, full of bravado, often set out from San Antonio and Austin, only to meet their fate on the perilous frontier. Yet Jack Hays thrived in this brutal environment, quickly earning a reputation as a fearless leader and a skilled tactician. For Hays, the frontier was not just a battleground. It was the proving ground where his courage and ingenuity would shape his legacy. Even within the unforgiving and hyper-violent world of the Texas Rangers, Jack Hays managed to stand out. Among an occupation filled with towering, broad-shouldered men who exuded raw strength, Hays presented a striking contrast. Standing at just 5'6", with a lean build, a youthful face, and a quiet, affable demeanor, he seemed unassuming at first glance. But those who met him quickly realized that his modest appearance belied a core of unyielding steel. His eyes, even from the perspective of history more than 150 years later, revealed a man utterly untouched by fear. In countless accounts from those who knew him, Hayes's approachable nature and unremarkable stature transformed in moments of crisis. On the battlefield, he became the epitome of the Uber Ranger, a figure of unwavering resolve and fearless determination. Hayes thrived where others faltered, embracing the chaos of combat and emerging as a natural leader. He possessed a rare ability to command respect and loyalty from men whom society deemed uncontrollable, turning them into disciplined warriors under his leadership. By 1841, his growing legend had already spread across Texas, cementing his reputation as a ranger of unparalleled skill and bravery. It was this reputation that made him the perfect choice for Stephen F. Austin's surveying party assigned to chart the rugged terrain around Enchanted Rock. Hayes wasn't just a participant in these missions. He was their cornerstone, a man whose courage and tactical brilliance could tilt the balance in the most perilous of situations. On a crisp fall afternoon, Jack Hayes, the legendary Texas Ranger, found himself at Enchanted Rock, standing amidst the raw beauty and danger of the Texas frontier. While the surveying team diligently measured and marked the land with steel ribbons, Hayes and his fellow rangers kept watch, scanning the rugged terrain for any signs of trouble. Confident in the apparent safety of the area, Hayes decided to ride out alone to get a closer view of the awe-inspiring monolith, a site steeped in lore and significance for the Comanche and other tribes. Unbeknownst to Hayes, the Comanche had been observing the surveyors with keen, calculating precision. Hidden among the limestone cliffs and oak-dotted hills, a force of Comanche warriors lay in wait, seizing the opportunity presented by Hayes's solo departure from the group. As Hayes approached the base of the rock, the tranquility of the afternoon was shattered by the piercing cries of Comanche war whoops, a sound that sent chills through even the most seasoned frontiersmen. Despite his calm exterior, Hayes must have felt the adrenaline surge as his well-honed instincts recognized the perilous situation. There was no chance to retreat to his party. He would be overtaken before reaching them. Now trapped, caught quite literally between the towering Enchanted Rock and the advancing Comanche warriors, Hayes made a split-second decision that would test every ounce of his skill and resolve. Spurring his horse toward the base of the rock, he dismounted and began a desperate climb up its granite face. His goal clear, to claim the high ground and mount a last-ditch defense. In the words of J.W. Wilbarger, author of Indian Depredations in Texas, Hayes was determined to sell his life at the highest market price. With each step, Hayes ascended not only the physical heights of Enchanted Rock, but also the metaphorical peak of frontier heroism. The stakes were life and death, but for Hayes, this was just another day on the unforgiving Texas frontier. Jack Hayes, with his distinctive dark hair and moderate stature, was a coveted target for the Comanche warriors pursuing him. To them, claiming his scalp would not only be a personal triumph, but a blow to the reputation of the legendary Texas Ranger. As the warriors ascended the massive granite face of Enchanted Rock with relentless determination, Hayes acted swiftly. He found refuge in a narrow crevice of the limestone where he constructed a rudimentary defensive position, using the terrain to his advantage. Armed with a .42 caliber Wesson rifle and a pair of Colt Patterson revolvers, Hayes braced himself for the onslaught. For a less seasoned fighter, the situation would have been overwhelming. The Wesson rifle, while reliable and powerful, was a single-shot weapon. Each shot had to count. Reloading was a laborious process, during which a defender could be easily overrun. Hayes knew this reality all too well, having witnessed young and inexperienced rangers fall in similar circumstances. Many had fired hastily, missing their single shot, only to meet a grim end at the hands of their adversaries. But Hayes was no novice. As the Comanche launched their first attack, raining arrows down on his cramped position, he resisted the instinct to fire prematurely. His experience and tactical discipline told him to wait, even as the danger pressed in around him. He aimed his rifle outward, tracking every move of his pursuers, using its mere presence as a psychological deterrent. The Comanche, though fierce and fearless, understood the risk of closing the gap under a well-placed shot and hesitated just long enough for Hayes to maintain the advantage. In this claustrophobic standoff, Hayes demonstrated the calm and calculated resolve that had earned him his legendary status. Every decision he made in those tense moments was one of survival, forged by years of experience on the brutal Texas frontier. Each time a Comanche warrior attempted a decisive charge toward his position, Jack Hayes raised the barrel of his rifle, its presence enough to deter his attackers. With years of experience on the frontier, Hayes understood the psychological dynamics of Comanche warfare. Despite their tactical brilliance and fearsome reputation, the Comanche adhered to a strategic philosophy that avoided unnecessary casualties. For the Plains warriors, survival and the ability to fight another day were paramount, even if it meant temporarily withdrawing from a conflict. This cautious pragmatism, though entirely rational, created an opportunity for a seasoned fighter like Hayes to exploit. Alone and armed with a single-shot rifle, his survival might have seemed improbable, yet his calm resolve and tactical acumen turned the situation in his favor. Hayes continued to hold his ground, making every movement and decision deliberate, knowing the Comanche would hesitate to risk their lives without certain victory. However, the patience of his adversaries began to wear thin. To the Comanche, Hayes was no mere intruder. He was a defiant presence atop Enchanted Rock, a sacred landmark they held in reverence. His ability to hold them at bay became an insult, a challenge to their dominance. As their frustration grew, the warriors resolved to end the stalemate. In the words of J.W. Wilbarger, the author of Indian Depredations in Texas, the Comanche decided to make their attack in earnest. With this shift in determination, the battle would soon escalate, testing Hayes' resolve and skills to their limits. On the sacred ground of Enchanted Rock, the conflict between the legendary ranger and the skilled Plains warriors reached its most critical moment. Jack Hayes steadied himself behind the makeshift rock wall he had hastily constructed, every muscle in his body coiled like a spring as he awaited the inevitable assault. The moments stretched agonizingly as the Comanche warriors, their war cries piercing the stillness, encircled the base of Enchanted Rock and prepared to charge en masse toward his position. Hayes, unflinching, remained hunkered down, his rifle gripped firmly in his hands. He waited with the patience born of countless battles, letting the lead warrior close the gap to just a few yards. Then, in a single fluid motion, Hayes rose, brought the rifle to bear, and squeezed the trigger. The shot rang out, the lead ball striking the warrior squarely in the torso. The sudden death of their comrade caused the Comanche to pause, their disciplined ferocity momentarily disrupted as they assessed the situation. Long, mournful, wolf-like howls echoed across the rock as the warriors called for a retreat to reassess. Taking advantage of the brief reprieve, Hayes quickly reloaded his rifle and checked his Colt Patterson revolvers, ensuring both were fully ready for the next onslaught. He knew the respite would be short-lived, but even a few seconds could make the difference between life and death. The next attack came swiftly and with even greater intensity. The Comanche surged forward once more, their high-pitched war cries slicing through the air, sounds designed to unnerve even the most hardened men. But Hayes, unshaken and resolute, waited again until his attackers were within striking distance. At the critical moment, he abandoned his rifle and drew his revolvers, their weight and familiarity providing reassurance. With precise aim and nerves of steel, he emptied the 5-shot cylinder of one revolver into the advancing warriors, each shot a calculated move to maintain his tenuous advantage. Hayes' courage and tactical brilliance shone through in these harrowing moments. Against overwhelming odds, he relied on his experience and unyielding resolve to hold his ground atop the sacred rock, turning the tide of the battle moment by moment. For Hayes, every shot fired was a testament to his will to survive and his refusal to yield to the fierce warriors of the Comanche. Once again, Jack Hayes' steadfast defense forced the Comanche into retreat. As the warriors pulled back, Hayes crouched behind his makeshift rock wall, hastily reloading his rifle and checking his revolvers, preparing for what he believed would be an inevitable third assault. But just as the tension mounted, a new sound broke through the din, the unmistakable crack of rifles and the rallying calls of his fellow rangers. Hayes must have felt a surge of relief as he realized his comrades were closing in on his position. Unbeknownst to Hayes, his companions had been engaged in their own battle against an even larger contingent of Comanche warriors. It was only the echo of Hayes's gunfire from atop Enchanted Rock that alerted them to his dire situation. Recognizing their comrades' plight, the Rangers advanced with determination, their weapons blazing as they made their way toward the sacred landmark. The sight of this larger Texan force, combined with Hayes' stubborn resistance, proved too much for the Comanche to endure. Understanding the cost of continuing the fight, the warriors chose to withdraw. They gathered their wounded and retreated into the canyons and sagebrush of the Texas hill country, leaving their dead behind to the vultures and the rangers. The battle at Enchanted Rock was over, a hard-fought victory for Hayes and his companions. Reunited at the base of the monolith, Hayes and his fellow rangers shared a moment of reprieve, their bond strengthened by the trials of the day. With vigilance heightened and spirits steeled, they resumed their work, continuing the task that had brought them to this perilous land. For them, the danger was far from over, but they pressed on, embodying the resilience and determination that defined the Texas frontier. Jack Hayes' life after Enchanted Rock was no less extraordinary than his early exploits. He led the Texas Rangers with distinction during the Mexican-American War, applying his tactical brilliance and fearless leadership to numerous campaigns. Even beyond his victories, Hayes' reputation continued to grow, not just among Texans and Americans, but also among his former adversaries, the Comanche. The Comanche, a culture that held bravery and martial prowess in the highest regard, could not help but respect Hayes despite their enmity. They bestowed upon him begrudgingly reverent nicknames such as Captain Jack, pronounced Captain Yak, and Bravo Too Much or Brave Too Much, titles that underscored their acknowledgement of his courage and skill. In the unforgiving world of the Comanche Plains, where a man's worth was measured by his valor, even an enemy like Hayes earned his due. In 1847, Hayes married Susan Calvert, the daughter of a wealthy hotel owner in Seguin, Texas, marking the beginning of a new chapter in his life. By 1849, the couple had joined the tide of Americans moving westward to California during the gold rush. Though Hayes did not strike gold, his unyielding determination and resourcefulness ensured his success as a rancher and businessman. His leadership abilities soon led to his election as the sheriff of San Francisco in 1850, a testament to the respect and trust he commanded even in new territory. In 1853, Hayes received an unexpected package that further highlighted his unique legacy. Inside the parcel was a small golden spoon, sent as a gift from none other than the legendary Comanche chief, Buffalo Hump. The spoon bore an engraving that read, Buffalo Hump, Jr. This remarkable gesture symbolized the profound respect Hayes had earned from even his most formidable foes. It was a rare acknowledgement of the complex bond forged between enemies who had clashed fiercely, yet recognized each other's strength and honor. Jack Hayes' story is one of resilience, leadership, and mutual respect, transcending cultural boundaries and leaving a legacy that resonated with both his allies and adversaries alike. Jack Hayes passed away in 1883 at the age of 66, leaving behind a legacy that still resonates in the annals of American frontier history. He was laid to rest at Mountain View Cemetery in Oakland, California, far from the rugged Texas landscapes where his legend was forged. The story you've just heard is merely a glimpse into the extraordinary life of Hayes. His experiences spanned countless clashes with the Comanche, daring assaults during the Mexican-American War, and other legendary exploits that cemented his status as one of the most iconic figures of the Old West. Yet his life was far more complex than a series of battles. It was a testament to resilience, leadership, and the intricate relationships forged amidst conflict. What do you think? Was Hayes a heroic explorer carving out a future for Texas, or was he an overconfident intruder encroaching on lands that were not his? Were the Comanche justified in their fierce resistance and the intensity of their retaliation? And how can we reconcile the profound respect between Hayes and Buffalo Hump, two figures who stood on opposite sides of history, yet found a connection rooted in mutual acknowledgement of courage and honor. These are questions that challenge our understanding of history, culture, and conflict. The legacy of Hayes, like the frontier itself, is both inspiring and fraught with complexity, inviting reflection on what it truly means to be legendary. If this story captured your interest, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more tales of the untamed frontier. Your thoughts and perspectives are always welcome in the comments below. Join the conversation and keep the spirit of history alive.